Denali is one of our DORA community guides. I'm not going to say much about what that means other than we're really excited to have her here and part of our DORA community guides program. And she's got a great topic for us, but I'm going to let her introduce herself and, of course, share her own slides. So, Denali, over to you. Thanks for joining us today.
All right, so I'm going to get started. So it's a pleasure to be here presenting. I have been a member of the community for a couple months now, and I feel like I've gotten so much value out of the presentations and the discussion. So I'm excited to try and give back a little bit to the community. My background is I've been working in software for more than 20 years, and I really do specialize in quality and velocity improvements and acceleration. That's very much of a sweet spot for me. So a lot of the discussions we've been having recently in the community have sort of related to questions around hiring and team design, and I thought it would be great to share some resources that I found useful on this topic, and also kind of my overall approach and strategy and how I typically try to solve these problems. So, if you're here on this call, I'm going to guess that you are working as some type of software developer support in some type of role, whether it's engineering manager, coach, advocate, or something like that, and that you have a goal that is shared, I think, with all of us, which is to speed up the flow of customer value delivery. And as part of that goal, there are lots of different challenges and nuances related to technology, process, culture. But one of the big areas that often comes up for me, and I think for many of us, is a question around staffing and a question of like who to hire, what type of skills and capabilities should we be looking for in pursuit of this goal. And then once we've hired these people, how do we organize them to be kind of most effective? There's a good friend and colleague of mine, his name is Jade Rubik, and he has done a lot of research. He's actually done quite an extensive amount of surveys, reaching out to engineering leaders and managers and asking about, kind of their perspectives. And he's tried to collate this together into kind of a very well-researched artifact. And I wanted to share this with the community because I think it's really useful. From Jade's perspective, he has sort of categorized these coordination models into 3 different pillars: what he calls centralized, role-based, and team-based. And so I'll go over a couple of these things and then sort of dive into strategy. So from Jay's perspective, the centralized coordination models are probably going to look pretty familiar to folks here. So this is the idea of like, the sort of leadership team running the teams of teams. How do they coordinate effectively across the organization? So, product strategy that's articulated clearly, a set of standards, tenants, having, different goal frameworks that are defined in different places, and, deploying those. Of course, metrics, that's one that we all, I think, are very comfortable and hold, dearly, product council. So in the second sort of category of coordination models, Jade has defined what he calls role-based coordination models. And this is, again, probably pretty familiar, or at least most of these things. So the idea of a program manager whose kind of sole responsibility is actually to coordinate across teams and projects. There's also an interesting concept of an integrator, someone who basically does a bunch of research and collects information, does interviews, and kind of puts that together into, a report. A controller that might have a direct authority or influence over a specific area or technology, and then also a standard definer. So getting into the last bucket, the team-based coordination models, these are kind of the largest number of examples or patterns. Some of these are probably going to look really familiar, some of them maybe not. I'm not going to go into all of these in depth, but just to kind of point out a couple things. So service provider, I think this is where teams usually start. So they're actually building things for other teams. This works okay with smaller groups, but as you grow, this is kind of like an anti-pattern and often evolves into either a consultancy or a self-service pattern. The self-service pattern is one that I like to deploy a lot, and it's kind of like this idea that, yes, we build things and capabilities that other teams use, but it's all done through a programmable interface. It's all done through software. We don't actually require any humans to work together in order to kind of use our product. And this is, famously something deployed at Amazon. Another set of potential team organization, team coordination, there's something Jade calls single-threaded owner, with this idea that there are cross-functional people, engineering, product design, that are actually fully reporting into one person. Another way that I kind of refer to this is what I refer to as inverse matrixed, which is this idea that there's one person that kind of owns a particular area regardless of functional skill set and is driving the team toward that. I think everyone's familiar with rotation. The merged group will probably look familiar. It's the idea, for example, DevOps is an example of this, the idea that we take two teams that were previously operating separately and kind of just merge them together. And the final set of teams, an away team, a tiger team, I've certainly seen that deployed many times, and community of practice, which is, I think, maybe resonating with some of us here. So I'd encourage you to go and follow the link and kind of read through those examples if you're curious. And the thinking is that, a lot of these patterns are maybe not necessarily the best in most situations, but being aware of them and having them as tools in your toolbox, might be useful for certain situations. So what do I do when I'm helping teams with hiring and organization? Well, I like to take a constraint-based approach and think about what is the thing that, if it's sort of the Pareto principle, if we address this one constraint, will kind of result in the largest amount of customer value flow. What I've found with teams is that the biggest constraint is typically capabilities. So an example team I've been working with recently, when I started, they had someone who only did front end, another person who only did mobile, another person who only did back end, another person who only did DevOps. And you can imagine in this situation, the flow of customer value was essentially at a standstill. And so as we were seeing how things were going, it really showed up, this skill-based or capability constraint within the team, in really slow deployment frequency and longer cycle time. And so my solution to this is often to try and hire T-shaped people, people who are maybe experts in one area, but also very comfortable expanding, learning, and doing whatever's needed to support customer value delivery, and also to help people on the team, the existing staff, kind of move on the spectrum. It's not black or white, reality is gray, but helping people kind of move in the direction of having more capabilities and skills that they can provide. When I think about the team of teams constraint, usually the biggest constraint that I see is around complexity. And so how does this show up in the DORA metrics? Well, usually I see the effects of this is throughput per team member per week drops, and is dropping over time because of the complexity of the code base and because of the complexity of teams working together. And the other really consistent metric I see quite often is an uneven team engagement metric. This isn't a first order DORA metric, but it's kind of derived as a second order. And basically what it is 20% of the staff is doing 80% or more of the work. So there's a large part of the staff that has essentially been left behind. The way I try to solve for this is with simplification. So lots of different things, organizing people around focused problems that are centered around the customer persona, the problem, the opportunity. Matrix teams or inverse matrix teams are a favorite of mine. Formalizing communication in and out, as I mentioned before, with predefined APIs can be extremely helpful. And then also decomposing projects into the smallest possible value delivery with a pattern called single steel thread. But the thing I like to use the most in these situations, actually, aside from these sort of well understood patterns, is the scientific method. And what this means is basically going to the teams and saying, what do you think we should do? Where do you see the problems? What do you think would address these issues? And then actually using the scientific method to run experiments with hypotheses and data, where that data is supplied by the DORA metrics. And so I will leave you with a few quotes about science, which I believe is essentially what we're doing here. We're bringing the scientific method into the business context. Science is the process that takes us from confusion to understanding in a manner that's precise, predictive, and reliable, a transformation for those lucky enough to experience it that is empowering and emotional. The scientific method is a tool which has been developed over centuries, and it provides a systematic way of asking and answering questions about the natural world. It is not infallible, but it's the best method we have for understanding the world around us. Science is the acceptance of what works and the rejection of what does not. That needs more courage than we might think. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Awesome. Thank you so much, Denali. That was incredible. It's a great, thought-provoking presentation to get us started here. And, I think that, just echoing one of the things that you said there, when I work with teams and discuss DORA, one of the things that I often remind them is that they're the experts. They're the experts in what's holding them back. They're the experts in how to move forward. And we can use the DORA framework as a way to help identify some of those constraints. And it is following that scientific method. So super cool. All right, well, as we continue on with our discussion today, now's the part where we all get to pitch in. So here's what we do. This is where we turn it over for lean coffee, a lean coffee discussion. And those of you that haven't been through a lean coffee discussion before, or maybe those of you that have, don't worry, I'm going to explain the process to you now. And the most important thing to know about this process, like many others, we'll learn by doing. So you can head over to this URL. I've dropped it into the notes for you as well, bit.ly/DORA-community-discuss. No need to sign in, just join as a guest, and you can immediately start adding topics to the board. And I'll share that board here in just a minute. But as you start thinking about what topics you'd like to add, I'll just describe the process a little bit. But again, we'll learn by doing. So when you think about a topic that you might like to add, my request is that you're passionate enough about that topic to kick off a conversation. That topic could be a question that you might have for Denali or for the group as a whole. It's likely related to something that Denali has just introduced to us, maybe some of the struggles or successes that you're having with organizing your teams, or it could be just about anything else. We do ask, of course, that you keep it sort of topical to our community. Once all of the topics have been added, but not yet, we'll invite you to vote. You can vote for your top 3 favorite topics or the topics that you'd most like to discuss. And you can drop multiple votes on one topic. We'll then move into our discussion phase where we'll set some timers. We'll talk about a topic for a set amount of time. There will then be a voting opportunity for you to decide if we should continue that topic or move on to the next. The beauty of this is that we all get to talk about the things that are top of mind to the most people here. The downside of this is we probably won't get through all of the topics, but that's okay. That's why we have a discussion group. When it comes time to joining into the conversation as we kick off those discussions, I do ask that you join the conversation, be an active participant here. The rest of this meeting goes really well because we all participate. You can use the raise hand feature. You can contribute chat in the chat. And then also you'll see on the Lean Coffee table, you're able to add notes to the topics and so forth. And please do be thoughtful. If you find that you're the one that's always speaking, maybe make sure that you've created space for others to contribute to the topic as well. And also recognize that not everyone that is here today is here to talk. Some of us are here primarily to listen. And of course, however you'd like to participate, we're super glad that you're here.